In our ballet training, we spend a lot of time thinking about what our dancing looks like, our lines, our placement, what we see in the mirror. But artistry isn't just visual. It's also deeply connected to what we're actually feeling and sensing inside our bodies while we move. This episode is part of an ongoing series with Chelsea, also known as the Geeky Ballerina, where we unpack specific elements of artistry as she identified and explored them in her thesis on artistry in ballet. In today's conversation, we're diving into somatic awareness. Chelsea explains what somatic awareness actually is, why it's such an important part of artistry, and the three-step process she outlines in her book for noticing, understanding, and adjusting what's happening in your body while you dance. We also talk about the impact of the mirror, how adult dancers can release tension in their bodies, and simple ways to start developing greater body awareness in your ballet training. If you want to feel more connected to your movement and less dependent on the mirror, this conversation is your first step. Let's get into it. Chelsea, thank you so much for being back on for our second element of artistry today.
I feel so lucky, like, I get to keep coming back.
I know we get to do 9, and this is only 2 of 9. So fun. So today we're going to talk about somatic awareness. So can we start with you, the expert, defining what that is for us? Because that's not necessarily something you might hear in everyday life.
At its simplest, somatic awareness is being aware of your body, your soma. So, people who are specialists in the field, they will talk about a lot of things. There is where you are in relationship to the things around you. How aware am I of what muscles I'm using versus what muscles are not engaging? Knowing what your body is doing because you noticed through your sensations. So we can look at what are we learning from looking in the mirror? What are we feeling in terms of how much of our body is on the ground? And then also as we get more advanced as dancers, especially with things like balancing, releve, things like that, a lot of times our body will just start to self-correct and we don't have to pay as much attention.
Why specifically is somatic awareness an element of artistry? Because as we talked about in previous conversations, you did this research on structuring artistry or understanding artistry as 9 elements because it does tend to be this kind of vague concept that gets thrown around. And so I love that you are actually putting language and concepts to it. But why, when you were doing your research, did you identify somatic awareness as a critical element of artistry specifically?
This is a great question and no one has asked me before, so yay for you. There's kind of 2 parts to this answer. The first is, in my opinion, the purpose of teaching artistry is to help dancers make independent choices. And the more aware you are of your body, the more empowered you are to make good choices for yourself. So we could do the other 8 elements of artistry, but if you are completely reliant on an outside source of information, you are still completely reliant on an outside source of information. And so your tools of artistry can't help you express who you are. And the other part of it is very often we come into ballet classes with this idea of this is what a ballet dancer looks like, this is what the technique is, this is how it should look. And yes, but also we are looking at photographs of a particular individual or diagrams from that are either like accumulated set of norms, which is imaginary, or based on one specific dancer. And so as we get more nuanced in our understanding of the technique, it becomes very much how does my body achieve this technique? Not so that I serve ballet, but so that the technique serves me, the artist. I always tell my students the technique serves you. And when we understand our bodies, for example, I have scoliosis myself. It's an S curve. Yay. Little bit of a corkscrew in there, not a huge deal. And then on top of that, I had a major, major hip injury. My right hip joint and my left hip joint feel different all the time. So being able to sense my own hip joints as 2 different things and what are they doing helps me make choices about how I can safely achieve the technical goals and also how the technique can serve me as I am using this movement.
I love that because I think as adult dancers specifically, it's so much about choices
Mhm.
because of exactly like what you were describing. Most adults come into the ballet studio with some sort of physical difficulty. And so I think I love that this element is serving that end of being able to make good choices, because I think that that's something that all adults are navigating inside the studio, is that element of like, how do I make the right choices for my body? So you talk in your book, which is amazing, and will be linked in the show notes and everyone should read it, about somatic awareness being a three-step process. So you talk about noticing things, making meaning, and then using that to make decisions. Could you unpack that for the listeners? Because like I found that section in your book to be such a great way of understanding somatic awareness and its value.
So it starts with just noticing. And there's a lot of different inputs. You can get feedback from another dancer or from a teacher. You can see your reflection in the mirror. You can feel something. All of these are really valuable inputs. So that's how we become aware of things. And then just a little bit more subtle than that is just focusing on what we feel. So if you're brand new to somatic awareness, and you're brand new to physical activity. You didn't come from a high school athlete background. You don't have a strong yoga practice or whatever. First, we start with some of the more external inputs, and those are completely valid. Those are part of developing your awareness. And then we use all of the different sensory inputs that we have to help us become more inwardly focused. And so in my book, I mention the first experience a lot of us have is landing on our own foot in a changement. We've all done it. Like, let's just normalize this. You don't need to be embarrassed. We've all done it and it hurts. So that is your information of, "Ow, that hurts." Okay, great. You are aware of what happened. Well, one step before that would have been noticing where your feet were in the air and noticing that they have probably overcrossed your midline. So that would be the second step, but we are still kind of in, like, perception awareness, and then really the great thing about somatic awareness is that it gives you this is where adults are much better at it than children, because we all have the information, "I landed on my foot," and then when you are more comfortable with somatic awareness or you have the cognitive skills that adults have, then you can use that awareness to make a choice in the middle of your jump to put your foot somewhere else and you don't land on your foot the next time. So it really is the accurate perception of what's happening. And then it's, how do I take my past experience, my present experience, and make a choice moving forward?
Yeah, and I like that you talked about how this is kind of a progression that's happening the more we're dancing. Like you're gonna land on your foot doing a changement. We all do it. We've all done it. And so when you're beginning, it's gonna happen. And then after the fact, you're gonna take that information and try to make a decision for the next time you jump. But then how you mentioned, as you're getting more experienced, you become more able to notice those things in real time as they're happening and think, "Oh, in the air, maybe I'm a little too crossed," and you can correct it. And I think that's such a great call out specifically for adult dancers, because there's that permission of like, this is something that you're going to grow and develop over time. Like, you're not going to walk into your first ballet class and just be able to access complete somatic awareness and make decisions that are going to prevent things like stepping on your own foot. This is just part of the growth trajectory of being a dancer. Have you been craving more time in the studio and more connection with other adult dancers? If so, I have great news for you. This episode is sponsored by Label Active, a dance and activewear brand inspired by the artistry, discipline, and presence of dancers, and the host of the 2026 Adult Ballet Retreat. 5 full days of ballet classes and social activities designed specifically for adult dancers, taking place in Seattle, Washington, June 21st through the 26th. I've personally attended retreats hosted by this team multiple times, and it's always an unforgettable experience. There's nothing like spending a week surrounded by other adult dancers, immersed in your shared love of ballet, in a space that's supportive and encouraging. And this whole week is thoughtfully built around adults: the pacing, the coaching, the environment. And there's 3 levels to choose from. So whether you're a beginner or have been dancing for years, this event is for you. I'm so excited to be attending again this year, and I would genuinely love to dance with you in person. Registration closes on April 15th, so if you're interested, don't wait. And because you're part of the after-class community, you can use code AFTERCLASS100 and get $100 off your registration. All the details and links to register are in the show notes. If you've been dreaming of a ballet experience that fills your cup, I cannot recommend this retreat enough. Hope to see you there. So, what are some of the benefits of developing somatic awareness specifically for an adult dancer in the ballet studio?
I think the most valuable part of developing somatic awareness as an adult is the way that you are inviting yourself back home. And I know that you are like asking for like benchmarks and like, are my pirouettes going to get better? Is my arabesque going to get higher? And we can get to those. But I really think you feel more empowered because you're noticing how strong you are. You're noticing the improvements that you've made. And it's no longer about, did I make it all the way around in a double pirouette? Now it can be something more subtle, like, hey, I don't think the pirouette looked better, but I'm certain that my fingers were in front of my ribs this time instead of off to the side. Or I'm certain that my releve is not like wobbling during the turn. So you're able to notice the things that you're doing well as you progress towards those benchmarks. And then
Yeah.
ultimately, it does lead to things like, I don't know if I've mentioned this with you or before or not, but I think arabesque is hard for everyone. Arabesque is for sure hard for me. I've just always struggled with it. And then about a year or so ago, I came across this very real anatomical fact that each of your vertebrae have a little bit of rotation in them. And it depends on where in the spine you're at for how much that is. But instead of thinking like square off your whole thing, like your back as a piece of like drywall, what if it is, okay, can this vertebrae move this much? And can this vertebrae move this much? And when I thought about just a lot of little adjustments, change how I approach squaring off in my arabesque. So as you're aware of how your body can move or how it is or isn't moving, then you can make these choices like it anytime we can take the body and turn it from, snowsuit or the body and turn it into here is a joint.
One of the things you also talked about in the book that I was like, "Oh, yes, this, we need to talk about this," is the impact of the mirror on somatic awareness. And so I would love for you to talk more about that and what we as adult dancers can do to prevent this over dependence on the mirror.
When you're working on somatic awareness, if possible, turn away from the mirror. Do it away from the mirror so that that visual input is no longer an option. When we take that away, you naturally find other sources of information. So that's the easiest. But if you're in a class where your teacher likes to have you face the mirror all of the time, that's a much harder thing to do. One of the things that I would recommend trying to do in that case is bring your attention to the back of your body, which is really hard to do. We have fewer sensory nerves on our back than we do, for example, on our front. Um, but if I bring my attention to a part of my body that I cannot see in the mirror, I cannot rely on the mirror. So I'm naturally going to start building habits of looking for other sources of input. So if I'm doing a tendu and I want to be thinking about my somatic awareness, okay, how do I feel between my shoulder blades? If we're focusing on a body part we can't see, the mirror automatically becomes disempowered.
So the next thing I wanted to circle back to, because I had mentioned it earlier, we'd started talking about earlier, is this topic of tension, because inevitably all of us as adults are holding tension in our bodies. So, what are some of the most common places that you see adults holding tension, and how can somatic awareness help us release that and like start to move more freely in class?
Yeah, shoulders. First one is shoulders. And I'm right there on that list with us. We all end up with a lot of shoulder tension. And then the second one is, pelvis, not pelvis. Your pelvis are bones, and bones don't hold tension, but hip flexors, back of the waist. That's the other one. And we can circle back to that one as well, but let's stay here for a minute. It's really difficult to notice the tension you are holding, especially if it is habitual, if you have learned it over the course of months and years, and sometimes for some of us, decades. You don't notice it because it is your normal. So, the easiest thing to do to help you realize how much tension you have is to intentionally get more. So, if I see someone or a group of people who have a lot of tension in their shoulders, we'll use the mirror as a tool. I'll say, look in the mirror, just notice how your neck and shoulders look right now. Okay, we're going to turn away from the mirror, lift your shoulders up, squeeze your shoulders towards your ears, and we stay here for a long time. And I want people to get uncomfortable. I want them to get a little bit burny. And then I say, okay, let it go all at once. Okay, now turn back to the mirror. Do you notice a difference? Well, first we talk about, do you feel the difference? And then we look at it, and people can very often see the difference because we didn't just get rid of the tension, we got rid of all of it. So adding tension helps you notice it, but neck and shoulders is adults all have it there. And it starts as early as junior high because they have heavy backpacks. So
Yeah.
that's a big one.
Thank you so much to Frenchie's Hairpins for sponsoring today's episode. I love partnering with brands that I swear by, and Frenchie's has been my go-to hairpin for years. What makes them unique is their no-slip velvet coating, and they really are the only pins that can hold my long, thick hair in a ballet bun or French twist. And I mean actually hold. I've truly put these pins to the test at ballet classes and intensives, dancing all day, sweating, jumping, turning, and my hair does not move. The velvet is soft to the touch and doesn't scratch, so they're gentler on your scalp than traditional pins. And major bonus, they come in color matching shades, so they disappear into your hair. If your ballet bun is constantly betraying you, Frenchie's just might change your life. Use code AFTERCLASS10 for 10% off your order. All the details are linked in the show notes. Once you try them, I promise you'll never go back.
But with somatic awareness in particular, adult dancers tend, if they don't come from a strong movement practice background, they tend to be really beginning in their awareness at first, but they don't go beginning, intermediate, advanced. Because adults already have the fully developed nervous system, they have the cognitive abilities. Once the really beginning stuff clicks, boom, done. They are ready for all of it. So, as your adult dancer listeners are looking at this, it does take time to develop, but at the same time, I think adult dancers often feel like, "Oh, I've wasted so much time," or "I missed out on so much time." Somatic awareness, actually, you didn't miss out because once it starts to click for you, things are going to click much, much, much more quickly than they would for a still growing body, and that's really fun for you. And so, as you're starting to look into somatic awareness, just know that you get the whole playground first. There are no, like, height limits that we're waiting for.
I love that.
Does that help? Does that make sense?
Oh, totally. I'm like, see, adults, we're not behind on everything. I think we always feel like we're the last ones to the party, and we're like, crap, I gotta catch up. But I'm like, yay, Chelsea just gave us something that we're not behind on. Thank you,
You're
Chelsea.
not behind on. Okay, well, then let's do some more things here that you're not behind on. You're not behind on sustainability, okay? Because adults come in, and somatic awareness helps with this because you're going to be more aware of your body and how it works. And because you walk in as an adult paying for their own lessons, you take less crap from teachers. It is intimidating to teach adults because they take less crap from teachers. And I love it. But that means you are less likely to get injured. You are less likely to stay at a class where you feel belittled or less than, which sets you up for physically and emotionally having endurance in this art form. You have something you get to enjoy forever. And a lot of our teenage dancers have a hard time making that transition from student into dancer. And adults walk in the room, no matter how inexperienced or uncoordinated they think they already are closer to dancer on that spectrum. And that's so cool. You guys are doing great.
I love that. I mean, we joke, but I think it's true. Like a lot adults, there's just so much that we're constantly feel like we're fighting against our age. And I love hearing that. It's like, no, there are some great benefits to starting or restarting with adult brain and adult body.
Wow.
So that's great news. So good. So how can people connect with you and where can they find your book and all the things?
My book is available on Amazon. There's a link on my website. The best way to keep track of me is on my website, geekyballerina.com.
Thank you so, so much for being on again today. And I'm so excited for our upcoming conversations, which there will be 7 more of. So, everyone, stay tuned. I will have all the links to Chelsea's information in the show notes, including her book, her blog, signing up for a newsletter, all the things. So, make sure you go do that. And thank you, Chelsea, so, so much for being with me today. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to share it with a friend or leave a quick review. It really helps more adult dancers find the podcast. All the links and resources we mentioned today are waiting for you in the show notes. And if you want more adult ballet content in between episodes, come hang out with me on Instagram @thebusybunhead. See you next week after class.